This is better than sex!
This might be hard to believe, but are you aware that nobody gives a shit?
So, with the recent Hazbin Season 2 leaks, I have made the decision to halt everything else I was working on, and to go ahead with the last essays I have regarding this series. And of the 3 options I presented, you, my dear viewers, wanted me to examine Vox. And today I will be doing just that, as I believe I have an idea as to why Vox has such a major hate boner for Alastor. By the way, shout out to Lilac Song X217X, because you're right. With that being said, I won't waste any more of your time, so let's get started. Because this theory on Vox is very, very simple. Vox is basically a Yandere fanboy that went over to the dark side after he heard Big Daddy Palp's throat groans. The best way to describe the 1080p demon is that he's basically a 3-way polymerization of Syndrome from The Incredibles, Zamazu from Dragon Ball, and of course,
It was me, Barry.
or perhaps as a better example, imagine if Emberlyn Pinkle snapped and just decided to go full Skywalker in a hallway. Just for the record, as annoying and as cringe as that character is, I would pay money to see that, because that sounds fucking legendary. Now, on the face of it, this may seem a bit off, as Vox typically acts more like a salty competitor, instead of a fanboy who is fueled by rage. At least, that's how it comes across when it comes to first impressions. But when you begin to look at his character and his reactions, it makes a whole lot of sense for him to be a combo of the 3 biggest fanboys gone bad. First of all, Vox and Alastor are dressed almost exactly the same. Now, there are some differences, but they both have bow ties, their suits have a similar pattern, they both yearn for domination, and both of them carved up their desks in a very similar manner. It was also made very clear that, as overlords, they were engaged in at least one fight that we know of, and Vox at some point had suggested that they worked together in the game of domination. But if you've seen the show, then nothing that I've mentioned so far is new. So let's do a little theorizing on Vox, now that I've laid out my general hypothesis. Now, personally, I believe that when Vox was still alive, he was a massive fan of Alastor, who I believe has been confirmed to have been a radio show host when he was still alive, when he wasn't shadowing as Jack the Ripper of the American South. For one thing, we know that Alastor died in the 1930s, and Vox is said to have died in his 30s or his 40s in the 1950s. And given that he's a TV screen in hell that runs a large media enterprise, could mean that in life he was likely inspired by Alastor's radio show, and as an adult attempted to make a name for himself in his own way. Which, if you think about it, makes a lot of sense. Radio was all the rage back in the first few decades of the 1900s, but by the time the 50s rolled around, technology had begun to expand. Sayonara FDR's fireside chats, and bonjour to I Love Lucy. And if he did try to mimic his idol by working in media, probably as a talk show host, the chances of him not playing fair and not making the most noble of decisions are quite high, considering he ended up in hell. And based on his appearance, it was most likely due to a television-related incident or something electrically based. Now, he's in hell, and he finds out that the guy he had once admired was down there and he was still running his show. Which leads me to believe that Vox then pulled a Syndrome and an Eobard Thawne, as he carved his own path towards the position of Overlord, so he could finally stand side by side with his hero. To be honest, I can't see why else he would essentially have the same type of dress code as the radio demon. It's like the guys at weddings meme. It would also be incredibly amusing if Vox didn't care that he ended up in hell if it meant he could just meet his hero. And when it finally came time to meet the radio demon, chances are he simply pushed Vox aside, or simply belittled him like how he trolled Vaggie in the pilot, or how he disregarded Penchus. And once that happened, he went down the path of both Syndrome and Thawne with a bit of Zamazu, and decided that if they can't be partners, then they'll be enemies. I also think that the rejection of Vox happened in this manner because I can't quite think of any other reason as to why he would want to team up with Alastor, or why he continuously, according to the wiki at least, wants to be noticed by him, or even how he would continue to emulate him throughout his time in hell. Has anyone noticed that all the advertisements for Vox show him having a wide smile, or whenever he's in front of a screen or in front of the press, he tries his hardest to keep that grin up for the sake of good PR? Why does that sound so familiar? In Stayed Gone, whenever Alastor chimes in, Vox simply tells him to piss off. But when Alastor goes,
"And here's the sugar on the cream. He asked me to join his team. I said no, and now he's pissy. That's the team."
Vox proceeds to interject and then blows his gasket. Alastor pushed the right button, and once his power was lost, the radio demon made sure to remind Vox that just because he was AWOL for a few years does not mean he's a pushover. For the record, I still maintain the idea that Alastor was using radio waves to communicate with Vox in this moment, which might be partially as to why his antlers expand when this happens, much like how Vox's antennae, spark whenever he's establishing a signal, which fits the dynamic between the two fairly well. Alastor was able to grab hold of Vox's power in the song rather easily, and because they operate in separate mediums, Vox couldn't maintain the total control he's had up until this point. The radio demon still dismisses Vox and his cohorts as people of no consequence, despite their vast array of influence, and the Yandere in 4K, being a crazy fanboy, could very well be associated with the line, a clout-chasing, mediocre video podcast, as opposed to someone who has, evidently, never gone out of style. The V's always pushing for something new, whilst Alastor keeps things simple yet entertaining in his own way. And if this be the case, it's gotta be a good thing that the radio demon came back to town so the flat screen doesn't get too complacent in his position in Hell's pecking order. But also a good thing for us as viewers, cause I'm looking forward to seeing these two rivals go at each other in the future, and I hope to God that Vox goes, "It was me, Alastor." So that was my little theory on Vox, and I hope you viewers enjoyed it. I had been sitting on this one for quite a while, and I am happy to see that it can be brought to the forefront of this channel. If you liked what you heard, smash that like button like you're Vox, wanting to get down and dirty with the deer. Comment down below what you thought of this theory, and do feel free to expand on it, or perhaps throw in anything I may have missed or overlooked. And if you want to see more of what's coming, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. I've already got the next couple scripts ready to go, and now I just need to carve out some time to get a decent recording in for both Alastor and Saint Repentious. With that being said, Godspeed, and I hope to see each of you in the next installment.